their elementary school counselor for the past 4 years. I took on a new role, a shared position between Rock Valley Elementary, serving their K through 4, and then with Central Alliance serving their K through 6. So I have a little bit different role this year, which I think will help you guys a little bit in understanding how you might start this, just starting fresh at a school or where to begin and kind of easing into it. So,
yeah, I'm Susan Ramhorst, and I am the Success Coordinator K-12 for Okoboji School District. So my role, I know a lot of you guys don't have somebody that's in this position. My position changes daily, but I consider myself, my main role is to support my counseling team as well, and just to do whatever we need to do to help our kids and families be successful at Okoboji. So.
We're going to be talking about the MTSS process today. I'm sure, well, raise your hand if you have an academic group that means for MTSS to go through. It used to be called a GEI. You would start and go through that process, and RTI, I think.
RTI for
so we're going to be kind of breaking down what that looks like for social, emotional, and behavioral. We just found a great need at our school. We had a lot of kids coming through, and if you're anything like me, it was like I would have a teacher stop me here, and I'd have a teacher stop me there, and oh, you need to meet with this kid, this is what's going on. Oh, I have an email to pass on to you. And I would get lost in all of those kind of sticky notes in my head, wondering, okay, what teacher was that? I'm supposed to be going to this classroom. Where do I go? You know, and so we needed a way to kind of move teachers through in a more organized fashion and to know that we actually have tiers they need to follow and kind of what that role was for us and for them. So that's kind of what we're going to be going through today.
Oops, that's not right.
Yes, yes. So we shared all the handouts that you'll see. Our website is open to the public, so you can do that. We had created a website so that our teachers can access for resources and everything like that. So this is just that was the different layers of the MTSS process. So Susan, you want to talk a little bit?
Yeah, you're all familiar, obviously, with what MTSS stands for, the multi-tier system of support. And this is what we got when we first were introduced. We got the little handout from the state with the little green and yellow and go to it. And then we actually went from there. We took our tiers, we kind of broke them down. We, for PD one year, with our behavior interventionists, really dug in and we created this website. And so you guys, the link is in the presentation that was shared for this. But this is our website, and it has all of the documents we're going to show you, and we linked them all open, so you should be able to download and use them as templates and copy anything you want to copy. That we started by stealing and copying from other people's websites. We hit PBIS heavy, obviously, for a lot of our interventions, but so we started, if you look at, we just went through each tier and broke it down. And I have this on the presentation better.
So those tier 1 interventions would be what you can offer in the general education classroom. A lot of the teachers don't expect that, right? They have a kid who is being a pain in their side and they want it fixed now. And so a lot of them come running to you and are kind of closed-minded at times when you say, what have you tried? What are you doing? How are you helping the student? And so that's kind of where we needed to start and have our teachers recognize that they are capable of serving those kids in the as a tier 1 intervention. They can offer them different breaks. They can offer them later folders. They can offer them, different accommodations that are considered interventions, so you don't need a 504 for those. And they can really help to meet their needs. Maybe they need a fidget. Maybe they need a stand-up desk. Maybe they just need better flexible seating.
Yeah, and this is the piece, and we get it. Our teachers were like, what do you want me to do? I can't do anymore, I can't. So a big part of it, especially when we were starting, was me going in and observing and letting them know these are all the tier 1 things you're already doing. And when they realize that they're already doing a lot of things, it's much easier for them to maybe add one more. Look at all this great stuff you're doing. Let's just formalize a little bit. Let's just structure a little bit more. And that kind of took some of the angst away from our teachers too, was in when we could go through and say, look at all this great stuff you're doing. But this is what we need to do for this one kiddo.
And I think if you don't have a Susan, because some of you are like, I don't have a success coordinator, like what am I going to do? I left Okoboji and I'm like, I have none of these resources. I'm at 2 schools, like who do I use? Your principals go in and they observe quite often, and that's an awesome person for them, you know, to go together and combine and say, what are your teachers doing well? And getting that from them already so that you can utilize that and say, this is what you're doing. If you don't have time to go in and observe like Susan did, use your principals for that. If they're going in already, utilize that.
If you've got the whole model, master, instructional coach thing going on for the grant, those are jobs that those guys can do too. You can use your instructional coaches, your mentor teachers.
So classroom guidance, the whole group would also fall under that tier 1. So what we offer to all of the kids.
So this is kind of our goals when we started. We wanted to have some way to know what was going on building-wide. And we came up with our universal screeners, and obviously we get it. You can't give a teacher a 5-page document. So they're rubrics, and we'll show you them in a minute. Very easy, very quick, and we get a lot of information from them. And we use that information. She used it to formulate classroom guidance, to figure out small groups, maybe some small group interventions that need to happen. You can recognize when the 14 out of 18 kids all have 2s in a box. That could be a system teacher thing, not a kid thing. So we would go in and work with teachers.
So like Susan said, what would happen is we would give a 2-sided rubric. One side is social emotional, the other side is behavior. And we would give enough so that they had enough for their students in the classroom. Teachers would require to fill that out and then give back to us. That happened 3 times during the year. So the beginning of the school year, they're getting to know their kids. They would fill those out. Then around Christmas break, which we get, it's a rough time for a lot of people, they'd fill them out again. And then in the spring again. So by having these rubrics and then running small groups off of it, gave me the data, like, is this kid growing? If they're in my fall group and they're in my winter group, we're not making a difference. What else do they need? What else can I do for them? If from my winter group to my spring group, they're making a difference, they don't come with me. And so there is a number based off of this. Is there a way to show So anyway, these are some of the things that the teachers go through. And then if you go to the top, they get a point for each. And we base it off of how many people are in the class, and we have a cutoff. So if it is 15 or below, then they are considered discrepant from their peers, and they would be considered for a small group with me or some sort of intervention. We go to a tier 2 intervention, which is the small group, because if we're jumping to individual, then our teachers lose track and think we can jump to tier 3 every single time. So that's why we go when we start then with the small group work, and then from there, if it's not working, then they may be considered for that individual time. If that makes sense. Are there questions about that? Yeah.
So a lot of, like, I would always want a leader in my small group then too. I mean, you're not
Yes.
taking them specifically.
Yes.
We always have model kids, model students
Yeah.
with our kiddos that are.
Yes, good question, because then you have that comparison for the data piece too within small group time.
And what's really awesome is now we can pull kids that started out as needing the intervention to be our model students when we do the group again, and they love that. They turned into the model. So excited.
Based on the screen, there's a score.
Yes.
Yep.
Based on that score determines if they go to the small group.
Yes.
And that small group, you consider tier 2, that's no longer tier 1.
Yeah,
Yes.
tier two would be, let me see if I got it. Tier 2 would be anytime you take a group.
Lunch groups, small groups.
Like from 4 to larger, 4 to 9, 4 to 6 usually is where you try to stay. And those tier 2 interventions are then, those are where we're going to start taking some data to see if kids are making growth. Behavior, like tier 2 intervention, would be some sort of little behavior plan. When you do a sticker chart, when you do a reward, when you use a timer or whatever. So when you start putting in specific interventions that you're still doing classroom, and then you can start taking data. Usually on tier 2s, we start our data collection to see if we're making progress or not.
Does that answer your question? Okay. Anybody else?
Just a quick question going back to your model students. How does that get communicated to a parent that their student's going to be in a model student in a tier 2 group? How do you do that?
So I have typically written letters home and just said, I have this group coming up, this is what it's going to entail. And then those model students, I'll say, I'm really just looking, we don't have any other interventions that we need your child in right now. So We use it during win time, which is called What I Need. And then a lot of the kids are going a lot of different directions. So we try to use those kids who aren't going to any other win group, or they're staying, they're pretty great students. And then I just let the parent know, I really need them to be a model in my group. They have these skills. I think they'd be a wonderful person to help their peers. And most of the parents are pretty supportive. Yeah, pretty supportive.
I have a question. I've been hung up on this. Does the child have that?
Yes,
Okay.
yep.
That child.
Yep, I usually pull the students in ahead of time and say, you know, I really am gonna ask that you be, a leader in my group, and it's gonna happen for the next 6
And the
weeks.
other kids can know that too. It's actually a
Yeah.
good thing when they know, hey, let's look how Willow's doing this today. Wow, and that builds up the kids, but it also lets the other kids know there's somebody that I can use as my model. There's somebody I can ask if I'm struggling.
Because most of them are gonna recognize,
Yeah.
like, ooh, that person's in here, they do the same thing I do. I mean, they know, like, oh, I hang out with that one at recess. Yeah, so it's good for them to know that too.
So how do you communicate, kids who are going to tier 2, how do you communicate that to the parents?
We'll get into that.
Okay.
When we start our
Yeah.
form, when we get to the form, we'll go
Yeah.
over that. That's a good question.
Let's see, so, next one.
Yep.
Okay, so this is how teachers, and this is the thing, to get to the point where we weren't getting stopped in the hall and a million emails and that. So we have a Google referral form, and it's shared on like at the elementary every day, and announcements. It's on the bottom with all of his other little things. It's in the weekly reminder. It's in the student or the teacher, whatever, email page. So I mean, and we always say bookmark it, but.
It's a passive way to
Yeah.
say, you have no excuse to be coming to me in the
Yeah.
hallway because this is posted everywhere possible for you.
And especially the first year, did you fill out the form? As soon as, that was our first response to anybody who was, did you fill out the form? Well, did you fill out the form? I need you to fill out the form, we're trying to get a process started, thanks. Just say thanks, that's implied compliance, works, love mine.
So if a teacher has a student and they are really struggling and they come to us, like students that we say, go ahead and fill out a form and then we'll get back to you. So this link is given to the teachers, they go through, it's very basic stuff. If you scroll down just a little bit, what the actual concern is in, because maybe they have a reading concern and they also have a behavior concern.
They can check as many boxes as they
Yep.
need to check. And then it briefly explain, give that nice description of what's going on.
So
And
then
that's
we
always
have-
how they start.
And as counselors, we know most of these kids. It's not going to be anything new
Yeah.
unless it's a new student. But it's nice to just have that, particularly what's happening in the classroom, so that you have a little bit of background information before you leave. So once we get these forms, it's sent in an email to both Susan and I. And we kind of go through, Susan decides if this is a social emotional or if this is a behavior issue. And I get the social emotional ones, and then our behavior interventionist would take the behavior ones. Now, if you do not have a behavior interventionist, you become the sole provider for both social emotional and behavior, which is just kind of what my role is this year as well. So,
Right. And I just include my school counselor on all the MTSS forms, because we all know there's usually something going on. That for even the academic kiddos, there very well is usually something going on that the counselor can help support the team with. So I include the school counselor on all the MTSS, academic behavior, all of them. But that's just, because yes, I'm the secretary and the keeper of the MTSS.
so also once this form is started, once a teacher is going to be bringing a student to MTSS, they are required to call the parent and say, we are starting an intervention at school. I am going to bring your student to the MTSS team to see what other interventions we can offer them to help them be successful. And so that kind of answers that question.
So the teacher is responsible for letting parents know that they made the referral, and the student is in the process of getting some extra supports.
It would be the same thing if they were doing it for academics for MTSS and someone was going to start a reading group. And that was, for at risk for reading stuff. So it would be the same thing, you'd contact the parents. That's what we ask of for the behavior, social, emotional piece as well.
Okay, so this is an example of, we keep saying the document.
So we set up the meeting, usually Susan sets all of those up and we have a time. In my schedule, I previously had Tuesdays where I did not teach class. I think it was one time a month. And so that would be our time where we would meet with teachers, we would go over, they they had a deadline that they had to have those forms turned in by, otherwise they had to wait for the next month. And that's kind of just how it was.
Every 2 weeks.
Yeah, okay. So, I'm trying to get back to this. So this is the form that the teacher has filled out, the majority of the top part, because they look at this and they get completely overwhelmed. So we try to offer this that we can fill out as they're talking so that it's not such a big deal to read.
So this first part is that we take off of, I just cut and paste that usually right out of their referral form. So this one was the behavior referral, that was their concern. That came into me on the first referral, so that's where, how much we start with when we start and we meet with the teacher. And then we meet with the teacher and we talk through it and fill out, the rest of this. Where do they struggle? Evidence. And for those of you that know the special ed, these questions also all fit into their eval, what they need to fill out, the special ed AA people. If it goes to special ed, you don't have to start over. We have absolutely all the information they need then to make that referral if the third tier doesn't work and we have to go to evaluation, the EDR, everything they need is on our form.
We made
They
this form
appreciate
for
that.
that.
Yeah.
For that reason, we made this form to set up that way because we were finding we were doing all this referral stuff, and then it was like we finally got to the point where we needed to identify kids for special ed, and we had nothing. We were restarting, and then the teachers were like, "I just collected 6 weeks worth of data, and you're telling me we're still not going to identify this kid." So we just needed to kind of clean up the process a little bit and change our form.
And our academic form is the same thing. It gives our academics everything they need to go to ER if they have to. And so you take out that, because teachers it's a long process either way. And so to tell them, well, let's just do one more data collection, or we have to do one more thing, then they won't refer kids. They're just like, forget it, I'm not doing it. But this would be then, we write a goal, we fill in some strengths, and this is just the teacher's kind of goal area. And we don't collect data on tier 1. Tier 1 is, let's try it, let's see how it's going. And a lot of times they stop at tier 1. Teachers figure out what's going on, they zone in on something in their classroom, they tweak something, and then they're like, they're great. They're great, we're doing well. So, and that's the whole point of this, is let's let teachers, empower teachers to help kids in their classroom so they don't need any extras, They don't need to go to tier 2 or tier 3. Our IEP kids, how many we put on was dropped. I was going to get that data and I forgot. I mean, we don't put kids in IEPs. We really are at that 1% that they say magically you're supposed to be at because of this process. You just don't have to identify because we're supporting them through our general ed interventions.
The next area is when we break it down. So that's where we're going to write down all the interventions you have tried. So for tier 1, you go through the teachers and you say, what have you tried? And that's where that whole group piece is. We also put the dates in there because it's nice. This document moves on with them from grade to grade. So it's not like if they're struggling, they're going back and saying, we're restarting with everything. You have what works,
building now.
you have what doesn't work, and then you're ready to roll. So the second part.
This little guy, you can see, got lots of interventions.
Yeah. This is when we just actually pulled and took the name off of. So
We did put a lot of supports in place with this little man, but
You share that document with us. I'm not able to link from that PowerPoint, but maybe that's just me.
okay,
yeah, we
You can't do that.
you can't either. Just
it's
this.
seamless. That's shared with the world, right?
Oh, okay.
And so we can't click on your links.
Sure. Okay.
They
So
didn't
we'll
share
have to
it.
share the documents individually.
You know what? Can you click on? If you click onto the website.
I'm on the website. Is there like?
Oh, this isn't on the website.
That's, yeah.
The blank one is on the website.
Okay. Oh, is there, it is?
Yeah, and it's because that's where our teachers go, and that's where we go to the website, and we just make a copy, so you have access to this.
We'll show you how to get there at the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Give you that.
Yeah, so then you see this little guy went to tier 2, and we had the reward cards and social skill lessons. He actually went to tier 3, transitional recess, which a lot of kids end up having to do, but he had some associate support outside for recess, and we did some things. And this is like you see that, so when they get up there, that's when we start collecting our data.
So just so you're aware, all of this wasn't done in one meeting with the teacher. What we did is where we got to their interventions, here, that's where we stop. And we might say to them, you fill in the tier 1 interventions that you're doing in the classroom. Anything that we can think of after that, we'll fill in on our own time. So that's not something that we sit together and usually do. We break and say, we're going to give you 1 or 2 interventions to try in the whole group setting, and then we'll check in with you in the next week or 2 and see how that's going. Because it doesn't make sense for us to say, we're going to wait a month and meet with you. If it's not working, then they're stranded for another month until we meet and give them another intervention, or they're coming to us outside of meeting time and saying, it's not working, what do I do? So that's why we have them do that, and then we check back. I usually sent an email, or Susan did. We just broke them up, decided who was going to contact who, and then just said, how is this working? If you need to meet again in the next 2 weeks, you let us know.
So here's the goal area. There was a group intervention. We kept the data. So as you can see,
So lots of data, and sometimes it gets used to move forward to the IEP identification, and sometimes it doesn't, so.
okay, so here's a tier 2, sort of an explanation. Again, that's on our tier 2. Obviously, that's when they're going to get a more targeted intervention, and we give some examples on the bottom for our teachers so they can kind of see some examples. We're lucky enough to have the smart room, and now we have an Explore Lab. So we have lots of resources and lots of things that would fit into a tier 2 intervention. And our smart room is available for sometimes specific kiddos, so we can do some specific interventions with our OT kids. Then tier 3, that's going. But tier 3 is the very, very intense. A tier 3 group has to be 4 kids or less. That's really important for academics. At least for RAA won't accept the data if it's more than 4 kids in a tier 3 intervention group.
Tier 3 would also include individual sessions.
Yeah.
Or if they're seeing an outside therapist, that also falls under the tier 3.
Yep. So any one-on-one counseling.
All right, so obviously, we kind of talked about this a little bit already. Why do we need this? We have frantic teachers, and we are naturally fixers. We want to fix everything for everybody. And we find at the end of the day, we are tired and we are cranky about it after a while, but we continue to do it and do it and do it. So we had to put this in place because I was a new counselor, and we had a lot of at-risk kids who needed things. And I just could not do that, even with all of the support that we had. And so we decided we have to get this under control. We have so many people who can help, who have different talents that can help, and we need to start divvying out those appropriately so that not one person is just serving this kid, or we're all doing the same thing for this kid. So that's kind of how this has helped us as teachers too. There were times where I went home and I'm like, I want to strangle my coworker because they're doing my job, and they had so many other talents that they could offer this kiddo, and the kid was being overserved in the same areas. So this has helped Sue to remember, oh yeah, that's her job. Oh yeah, that's my job. And that's a great problem to have. So that was really a need that we had. Now, the where do I begin? I added this slide in because, like I said, I transitioned to 2 schools this year. So I spend 2 of my days at one school and 3 at the other, and then they get flipped around. And I'm finding that I do not have time to run this on my own. How many of you're the only counselor, you don't have an at-risk person, you don't have a success coordinator? Okay, so a lot of us. And for me, I was like, how am I gonna get this going? Because I know it works. So what we did is I have a middle school and a high school counselor at Rock Valley, and what we decided to do was start really small. And with that, we started using the form. So when we have our counselor meetings each month, we have an agenda, and we can bring up students who we feel need to be discussed. Whether they have a sibling, or we just want all the counselors to know so we can brainstorm interventions, that's what we're going to do. So if they're not on the agenda, they cannot be discussed. Then we start filling out the form for them so that we have that and it can travel with them. Right now, it's just among the counselors, and then we already have an MTSS team for academics. So we're gonna start easing that into their schedule because we have the first Wednesday of the month PD, and that's when our academic MTSS meets. And so there's no reason why us as counselors can't go around and do the social emotional behavior aspect of that at the same time. So we decided we're just starting small, and then hopefully we're gonna keep adding steps in until we can really get this built. I have also used the rubrics this year for my small groups, and so that's another piece of the puzzle that we've added in that these teachers have never seen. I also am working on getting an electronic version of this so we don't have to kill so many trees. So once I get that, we'll share it out with you.
We do have an electronic that's shared that now we just have our teachers go in and put in the numbers for each kid and a tally. So we just updated that this year, and I added a link to that in the presentation too. But that's we just started for the same thing because we would sit down still. I mean, I know it sounds, but the three of us would sit down and go through every single kid's sheet because you still know things about the kiddos, and so we still talked about like what kind of groups and which of the kids are overlapping and who really, and it helps us decide when one teacher has like 15 kids in their room that qualifies for a small group, you know, I don't think so. So those kind of things we still go through as a team and look at every kiddo.
And you can use what you already have too. You just have to be creative. That's the thing about it. One beneficial thing is most of you as the teachers don't realize that this is actually a need for social, emotional, and behavioral stuff. We don't have like it all laid out for us like academics most of the time. That's often handed to them. This is something that we're having to come up with extra on our own time. And so if they can understand how this is going to drive your program and be beneficial, they're more likely to buy in with it and be more willing to do it this way. Same thing with administrators. If you can show them this is going to provide me data which goes to here and here and here and allows me to know what I have for small groups and individual, and that we're doing this the right way, they're more than likely going to say, yes, I'll support you, I'll tell teachers we have to use this form.
One of the things that the teachers really like, and again, they've had this now for a few years, so and we actually are now at Tier 2, we're in our second year of PBIS at the elementary, but this was a huge precursor to that. They had voted and we never got, more than like 10% buy-in, till they had experienced some PBIS and experienced this and realized that, when you put a little structure to your behavior and some expectations and common language and it does work and it's helpful on my website. Where's the website? Oh, no, that's not. Oh, there's our data. That's the electronic data converter.
So that's all what the teachers fill in on each student.
Oh, here we go. So if you on the website, we go and divide. So for each tier, in Tier 1, we actually went through and we did a little survey and got like the top 10 reasons kids are getting referred. And so we went through and came up with some interventions. Again, and then we linked to the PBIS world, but gave them some ideas. So especially that first year, we would have the website up and we met with the teachers and say, well, what are you doing when you tell me he's flirty? And then we'd go through some intervention ideas. As always, they want stuff, they want ideas, they want strategies, so they don't have to reinvent the wheel. A lot of times it's really easy. We have some example data collection tools on here. We kind of just gave them everything they need so they couldn't tell us, I don't have time, I don't know what that is, I can't find that. We kind of cut that piece out for them by doing all the work for them. So you see we have, and then we link to other examples and we just gave them ideas for their Tier 1. So that's all on our website.
And it was awesome too, if I knew like I was gonna be gone the week that we had MTSS, I would say, go to the website, go through, tell me what you're using, try some of the interventions, and if they don't work, connect with me. But some of them want just you to give the ultimate answer, like you're the goddess of help or the god of help, and they don't wanna have to do anything, so that's why this is awesome, because the resources are all here, you say you do with it what you want, but here they are, and until you can put some Tier 1s in place, we're not going to be coming in.
Another key component of this is validity check. So validity, so we do have a validity check document too, but we go in and, when they're saying it's not working, and then you go in and you're like, you're not doing it. Bummer. tell me, let me know when you've tried it actually, and then we can talk about it.
And
So-
Susan says bummer, but she actually does tell our teachers that, so.
I also am a love and logic facilitator, so there is a lot of love and logic happening during the MTSS process. But, you know, it is a bummer if you know, it's not gonna work if you don't use it. If you don't try, so I'm not, you know, don't tell me that it's not working. Of course it's not, you're not doing it. Yeah.
So how long, you said you want them to do the tier 1 for how long?
Well, it just kind of depends on your kiddo. Usually they say 4 to 6 weeks. Sometimes with the behavior intervention, you know, quicker than that. But 4 to 6 weeks is usually a good time,
Before
amount
you
of time
come in
to
with the
give an
tier
intervention
two.
a shot.
So they do it for that long before you come in as a tier 2?
Oh, no. Oh, well, before we would move to it. But they're going to do it that long. We're going to collect data. Sometimes we tweak it because we meet with them every 2 weeks and say, maybe we need to shorten the reinforcement period, or maybe we need to go with a different motivator, or maybe let's do a motivation scale and see if we're even hitting the right target for this kid. Are we really getting a replacement behavior? You know, we'll tweak it, but usually they have to go 4 to 6 weeks before we'll say we're going to add a tier 2.
Well, to answer your question too, if it's actually like not working at all and we've moved on, then sometimes we'll say, all right, we need to move to a tier 2. They've tried a ton of things, or they already have a ton of tier 1s in place. Nothing is working.
Yeah.
So then we'll move to that tier 2. But we're not going to make someone wait 6 weeks if they know the interventions that they have are not working. I mean,
Yeah.
that makes absolutely
We'll
no
change
sense.
interventions, but you want to
Yeah.
try that. You know, and you know which teachers have super classroom setups, and they're doing everything, and so we're not going to make that teacher whose room has got full of tier 1s
Yep.
wait for. So you know,
You just gotta feel it out, kind of. I would say if you try 3 tier 1 interventions and they're unsuccessful, move on to a tier 2.
And then obviously if the kid's violent, or if there's, you know, if there's that kind of a deal, they could jump right to 3.
What about at the high school level when a student is seeing 4 or 5 different teachers during the day? Like we might send out something, we need to collect data on this kid, and we have one teacher that's giving us great data, and then, or they're like, I have a problem, so why do I have to fill this out?
And you know, we're just starting to implement this in our middle school this year with more fidelity, and that is a case because when 5 different teachers, and you really know then that what's going on. Well, it's only happening in social studies. He's great at math. But so we do collect the data then, and we usually use Google Forms. So all they have to do is click a couple buttons, you know, and then you can kind of start to weed out. And the teachers that they really aren't having any issues with, it's good to find out why. So then we might actually have that teacher do an ABC, which they're like, but he's fine. Exactly. What are you doing that's so awesome? Like spin it, you know? What are you doing so awesome so we can help the other students? But so we still want to, you know, we make that data collection, but then I have all the teachers do the form and compare that data, and really we can kind of really zone in then and use your ABC and find out what's triggering him in social studies.
Even if we do like a tier 2 small group, a lot of times academic will trump during our learning seminar time. Oh, they're failing my class, I did first. And it's like,
Yeah. We went through that too.
That's an admin support.
It is, it really is, because they drive, like, we have to meet this standard, we have to do this, we have to do this. But we've also put up the fight, like, how do you know that it's not behavior, social, emotional that's driving the academic failure, you know? So there's times where we have met with the academic MTSS team and our team and said, where are we at? How do we know that this is academics, or how do we know this is social emotional? We need them in our group for so long, and if we see a change or you see an increase in academics, then we're gonna keep them. So,
And especially at the high school level, I hear ya. Sometimes you just need your principal to go to that math teacher and say, listen, he's not going to do math until he gets his head straight. So let's get his head straight and then give him a shot to learn geometry.
so how
And,
long
you know,
do you?
we have a principal that will do that.
Is it every day? Is it every other day? Like ours is on a 4-day rotation.
for small group.
Well, yeah, I mean, like if we were doing it once a week, so that they still could get to them to do 4 days if they have work around our time.
Yeah, I did once a week.
Once a week.
Yep, and it depended on how severe of issue it was. Like my mean girls group was twice a week.
Yeah, and she would do one and I would do one. And
Yeah.
we would share a group sometimes and, yeah.
Yes.
So just to clarify, if one teacher has recommended that Johnny, you would then send it out to all of his teachers and say, please fill out, or do they all fill it out together?
Most of the time, I would say they fill it out together. Yeah, and then they can share their concern, or they can share where the successes are, and that's good data too.
You know, but like, that's the trick from from elementary, it's easy because they have one teacher. When you get to that middle school or high school where they have multiple teachers, they, you usually if one fills it out, more will fill it out. But once you have a form on one, then you can go to the team meeting or do a team time and say, here's what's up, what's everybody's thoughts on this kiddo, how are they doing? And then you can kind of zone in on that a little bit more. And we're, like I said, I'm just convinced middle school that this is awesome. And, well, we have a couple elementary teachers that moved up and we're like, where's the MTSS process? So we're still kind of sorting out, because there are a lot of quirks in it that are different for those grade levels, but it works. They love the form. That's the one thing they've all agreed on. We use the documentation at all 3 buildings. It just is so much, it's a great place to have all your data from everybody. So everybody that's involved with the kiddo has access and put their stuff in one place. That's just really helpful.
Our next slide talks about data, and once you get teachers there and you're like, you need to collect data for 4 to 6 weeks, you see that, I don't have time for that. But it's absolutely necessary to make them move on, and so instead of them trying to figure out what they need to collect data and how and what it's on, this and that, we have just limited it down for them. And so there's links to all of those things, and we might tell them, okay, you're gonna use the ABC, and we're gonna do this every day, and this is how you're going to do it. Susan might go in and observe, and she might fill out the first day for them. This is what I'm doing, this is why I marked this. And then from there, they take over. But that way, they're not lost, and then they've collected data on their own for 4 to 6 weeks, and we're like, you've given us nothing, and then they're even more frustrated. So if we can just we can limit down what their data options are, then, and tell them which one to use, it makes it so much easier. And then the stress level comes way down.
And we have them both. They can use a paper, or they can use, we can easily drop it into an electronic and do, the Google Forms are awesome because you get little charts and stuff in, which is love our little, yellow, green, people love to have those little charts. So Google Forms is a great way to collect data too. So, and they're so easy to make, and then you can, use those to collect your data too.
Okay, so we went through a ton of stuff, and you're probably trying to figure out how this applies to you and your resources and what you have. So if you have questions, we'll try to answer the best that we can. Or if you're missing something that you thought maybe you were going to get and you didn't, let us know so we can talk about it too.
And if a document isn't opening or isn't shared or whatever, just email us at school and I'll try to share it with you.
Email Susan at school.
Oh, email me at school, not her.
Because my
I can't even email her at school.
Okoboji email is on there still. We'll be able to
Yeah.
change that.
Could
So
we get your email address again?
Yeah, I don't know that. Do I have
from the
it?
beginning.
I'm not sure. Did I have it?
No, it
I'm
wasn't.
sorry.
Okay. Go ahead.
It's Ramhorst, SRAMHORST at okobojischools.org.
Not implemented quite yet.
It's not completely, because the high school is a little bit different because of all the credit and stuff, but we do use the form, and we do have a team, so, yep.
The question
We
was,
have
how is
that.
this being used with high school? So Susan was saying to use the form and all of that. Yes.
I hear you say that you're doing your tier 1 groups just once a week, or do you do those twice a week?
Nope, tier two.
Two.
Small groups were once or twice a week, depending on what the topic was. I was previously in classrooms weekly, and now that I'm between 2 schools and covering lots more grades, I am once a month in every grade level. So that's a huge change for me in how this works too. Yep. Yeah.
Sid has met once a month as a team. Is that just because of scheduling, or is that?
It was actually every other week. She just forgot.
Bi-weekly. Yeah, I
Yeah, no, we met, actually as a team, we met every week, but we met with teachers specifically to go through MTS plans every other week.
Do we meet with them during like their prep time then, or how do you kind of?
A lot of,
teachers.
we met with them, yep, during their team time, prep time.
Yeah.
So you take them the whole day then?
So our team times are set up so they're staggered, and most of the time their kids are in a special when they meet with us, and so that's
Let's
kind of
throughout
how it's
the
split
whole
up.
day, just different
Yep.
times, yep.
Because that's how our team times are split up. Yep.
So for tier 1, right now, in my building, we're trying to do some shifting where some more teaching around social emotional learning is happening from the teachers. Did you do anything, have you done anything with that to help them?
When we presented this,
I saw you have like teach social, you know, under some of the
and we have examples of those, and we actually, we got to have some PD time when we implemented this, and we used examples for teachers, and we have, like, they walk in, the corny thing is elementary, where we actually used and showed them some of, you know, models and strategies, and taught some of that stuff. And anytime they want, will come in, like I came in, especially at the beginning, and would teach a social skills lesson and show them how to, you know, do a feature or teach a lesson. And Emily would do it in guidance for them. So if they needed it, we would totally model it. We gave them the resources, so if they were, I'll just look and I can figure it out. But
At my new school, it's very similar to that. So a lot of the teachers take on the social emotional because I'm only in their classroom once a month. And so most of the time if they're having issues, they'll ask me like, can I have a book on this? Or I'm looking to talk to my class about this. Do you have ideas that you can share with me? And then we'll just connect that way. But that's kind of been self-guided by them. They've reached out to me and initiated that. So you could easily send out like once a week and say, here's this, you know, this lesson I'm not going to get to it this month or this year. If you would like to share that for social emotional development, feel free. Or if you can incorporate it in any of your readings, you know, that sort of thing.
this year, with the whole PBIS, we actually have some videotapes of modeling how to teach a lesson and how to, you know, so we have videotape, we have little lessons that we videotape and share too. Principals, yeah, I mean, so it, you know, and this actually, this is just fits right in the PBIS, so.
For our staff process, separate from our MTSS process, separate from our PBIS process, and two of us, our TLC coordinator and myself, are in all of those. Just not the case with the staff. So I think merging all three of those, reading and reading grade level.
Yep, so our behavior interventionist is our PBIS coordinator, which helps, so then, you know, we're able to coordinate.
You said the site where you have your forms and stuff, where is that?
It should be shared on, I think people are accessing it over here. It should be shared to the ISCA. We have shared that with them with our presentation.
Yeah.
But if you, for whatever reason, can't get that, email Susan. I know she gave her email address out. She will have more access to the documents than I will now that I'm in another school district. But I can access these without having the individual Google
This
Docs.
is
if
the
I go.
Google site, right at the bottom there, that's.
If you search in Google, Okoboji social emotional or Okoboji elementary social emotional website or MTSS website, it will come up. Yep. Any other questions? Yeah.
At what point do you have parents come in to sit and hear everything your students know? Like, and when you get to that process, that point in the process where you're going to go tonight, that their first week, we're like, hey, we done all this and now we think this, or
It would depend on the kid.
Right.
You know, what's going on. If you know, some parents we already know or we're in contact with at the beginning. Some parents, you know, the teacher's in contact all the way through. But especially when they get to tier 3, usually at some point we have our meeting with the parents too.
Yeah, and you'll have those hesitant parents, like when they're like, oh, they're going to start meeting with the counselor, and our principal makes it very clear, this is an intervention at school, and this is what your students will do. It's not a choice. So they can't say, I don't want them meeting with the counselor. This is the intervention, just like we're offering a small group for reading for your kid. This is not a choice. So that's helpful as well. But yeah, those kids, you know, who have the everyday issues in the classroom, the teacher is mostly in contact with the teacher already, and so it makes it easier, so they're not really surprised. So.
So your small group time, we have lots of scheduling issues in my school that we don't have a lot of free time for small groups because they have to have so many hours or minutes for reading and so many minutes for math. Is that when you're taking your small group out of those?
At our elementary.
Because we have tier times that's called part of a crunch, and that's for reading. Is that when, I can't take kids out for small groups during that time because it's core instruction.
Is that where you are taking your kids out for?
Ours is like if kids need math intervention, reading intervention, what else? Yeah, for our wing time. And so it's like a break in our day where everyone goes and does small group interventions somewhere. Whether they stay in their classroom or they go to special ed and that's when I pull my kiddos out. I do not have that this year, and so it is, I will run during my lunch. With them, I'll do my small group during lunchtime. So it would just have to be grade like peers, and then you'd go that route. If maybe one day you do a small group with kindergarten, one day the next lunch period, the next day you do another grade level and so on. So.
We just take a couple of the what I need periods. So they might do math one day, they might do a social group one day, they might do reading one day, but all kids have that what I need time. We have that built into our elementary and our middle school schedules now. So middle school has what I need time now too built in, so that we can pull those kiddos to do that too.
How long are those usually?
Wing time is about
Like
25
minutes at the elementary. It's a little longer at the
And if you're in the spot like I am this year, like figuring out what can I implement, how am I going to get this going with 2 new schools and 2 new groups of people, shoot me an email and I'm happy to brainstorm with you guys too, because I'm in the same boat as you, just going step by step, little by little. And my email is ekoersel@rbcsd.org. What?
You have to say that,
Okay. Yes, so it's EKOERSL@rbcsd.org. So Koerselman@RockValleyCommunitySchoolDistrict.org. All right, very good. Any other questions? Okay, so we're gonna ask a really crazy request from you, but we want to get a selfie for all of you who want to just learn more about MTSS. So we're gonna have you gather all together, and we're gonna get in a group and take a picture. Don't accidentally. Yeah, so just if you switch to the middle.
We have to prove our admin we did
Brent's crazy.